Imagine sitting alone in your kitchen, the weight of a lifetime of sacrifices heavy on your shoulders, only to hear your own son laugh over the phone, dismissing your pain like it's nothing. That moment, when trust shatters, when the person you love most betrays you, cuts deeper than any knife. For me, Eleanor Hayes, that moment came on a cold Boise night. And it changed everything. Stick with me as we go deep into a story of heartbreak. And let me know in the comments if you've ever felt that sting of betrayal from someone you'd give the world for. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you. The clock on my kitchen wall ticked past 9, its soft rhythm the only sound in my small wooden house in Boise, Idaho. I sat at the table, a stack of medical papers spread out under the glow of a single yellow lamp. My fingers, stiff from years of typing as a bank clerk, traced the numbers on the latest hospital bill. $9,500. That's what I'd scraped together over 18 months, for a knee replacement surgery. Every penny was a promise to myself. A chance to walk without wincing. To tend my herb garden again without collapsing in pain. The garden, just outside the window, was cloaked in night's frost, its basil and mint leaves trembling in the chill. That garden was my sanctuary, planted with my late husband, Walter, back when life felt whole. On the counter sat Walter's old coffee tin, dented and faded, the one he'd used to brew our morning pot for 30 years. I could still see him standing there, humming some off-key tune, his apron splattered with grounds. He'd been gone 8 years, but that tin stayed, a stubborn reminder of love that didn't fade. I smiled faintly, then turned back to the papers. The surgery was set for August. 4 months away. 4 months to hold on. To keep the pain at bay with cheap pills and sheer grit. The phone rang, sharp and jarring. I glanced at the screen. Jeremy. My only son. My heart lifted like it always did when he called. At 34, he was still my boy. The one I'd raised alone after Walter's heart gave out. I'd worked double shifts, skipped meals, and sold my mother silver to get him through college. I picked up, expecting his usual quick check-in, maybe a story about my granddaughter, Sophie. Hey Mom. His voice burst through, bright and loud. I'm about to change our lives. I took the money from your account, for a poker tournament in Vegas. It's a big one. Huge payout. When I win, you'll be proud. My breath caught. The money? My surgery money? I gripped the phone, my knuckles whitening. You took the $9,500, for poker. He laughed. A big, careless sound that echoed through the line. Yeah, Mom, relax. It's an investment. I got this. Before I could speak, I heard her, Leah, his wife. Her voice sharp and low through the speakerphone. She's old, Jeremy. She doesn't need that surgery. Let her stay home. You'll handle it. Jeremy chuckled, softer this time. Yeah, babe, I'll take care of everything. The teacup in my other hand slipped, crashing to the floor. Shards of white porcelain scattered across the linoleum, glinting like broken promises. My chest tightened, a dull ache spreading where hope used to be. Did my son just call me a burden? Was I nothing more than a bank account to him? I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Their laughter faded into static. My fingers dug into the table's edge, nails scraping wood, as if I could anchor myself against the truth. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. Jeremy, I managed, my voice thin, why didn't you ask me? Oh come on, Mom, he said, still chuckling. You always come through. Gotta go, plane's boarding. Love you. The line went dead. I sank into the chair, staring at the shattered cup. The kitchen felt smaller. The walls closing in. Outside, the garden was a blur through my tears. I thought of the nights I'd sat up, balancing checkbooks to pay Jeremy's tuition. The weekends I'd spent babysitting Sophie while he and Leah went out. All those years I'd told myself it was worth it. That my son loved me. That he saw me. But that laugh. That cold, careless laugh. And Leah's words, slicing through me, she's old. She doesn't need that surgery. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the thud of my heart, unsteady, but stubborn. Somewhere deep beneath the hurt, a spark flickered. Not anger. Not yet. Just a question. Quiet but insistent. Had I spent my life loving a stranger? Then in the silence, I noticed a text on my phone. An old one, from Jeremy to Leah, left open in a thread he'd forwarded me months ago. I don't want Mom finding out about the $7,000 I lost last year. Keep it quiet, babe. My breath hitched. $7,000, gone to gambling. Hidden from me. What else didn't I know? I stood, my bad knee throbbing, and walked to the sink. The cold water stung my hands as I rinsed them, trying to wash away the ache in my chest. The coffee tin caught my eye. Walter's tin. Steady as ever. He'd always said I was stronger than I knew. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to find out. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned your sacrifice into a joke? Share your thoughts below, because this story is just beginning. And Eleanor is about to show us what strength really looks like. The night stretched on, heavy and restless, as I sat in my herb garden behind the house. The air was sharp with a scent of mint and basil, their leaves silver under full moon that hung low over Boise. My bad knee throbbed, but I couldn't go inside. Not yet. The kitchen, with its shattered teacup and stack of medical papers, felt like a trap. A reminder of Jeremy's betrayal. The $9,500 I'd saved for my surgery, gone. Thrown into a poker game in Vegas. And his laugh still echoed in my ears. Leia's voice, cold and cutting, played on repeat. She's old. She doesn't need that surgery. I wrapped my shawl tighter, the wool scratching my skin, and stared at the garden Walter and I had built. It was all I had left of him. And maybe, now, all I had left of myself. The wind stirred, rustling the basil plants, and I leaned forward, my hands brushing the damp soil. This garden had been our dream. A patch of life we'd carved out together. Walter would kneel here, his hands steady, teaching me how to prune rosemary just right. After he died, I kept it alive, pouring my grief into every seed. It was where I'd go when Jeremy's calls stopped coming, when his visits grew shorter, when Leia's sharp comments started to bruise. But tonight, even the garden couldn't quiet the storm in my chest. My fingers closed around a mint sprig, and I snapped it. The sharp scent stung my nose. My eyes burned, but I wouldn't cry. Not yet. My mind drifted back, pulling me into memories I'd tried to bury. I saw myself at 30, a single mom in a cramped apartment, balancing checkbooks by lamplight while Jeremy slept in the next room. I'd worked as a bank clerk, my fingers flying over typewriters, my back aching from long hours. I skipped dinners to save for his school supplies. Sold my mother's silver brooch to pay for his college tuition. $20,000, gone to get him a degree he barely used. I thought it was worth it. Thought every sacrifice built a bond that couldn't break. But Jeremy had changed. Or maybe I'd just been blind. He'd started asking for money. Small amounts at first. Then bigger. $15,000 for a real estate startup, he'd said, his eyes bright with promises. I gave it, picturing him building a future for Sophie. Instead, he bought a sleek black car, the kind that turned heads, but didn't pay bills. I shifted on the bench, my knee protesting, and remembered Sophie, my granddaughter. 5 years old, with her gap-toothed smile and love for my tomato soup. I'd spent months babysitting her, waking at dawn to braid her hair, stirring pots of soup while she colored at the kitchen table. Jeremy and Leia would drop her off without a word, off to dinners or weekend trips, never once saying thank you. Leia would pick Sophie up, her lips pursed, commenting on the soup. Too rustic, Eleanor. You should try something modern. I'd smile, swallow the sting, and tell myself it didn't matter. But it did. Every slight, every dismissal, piled up like stones in my chest. Then there was the gambling. I'd bailed Jeremy out once, $5,000 to cover a casino debt. He swore it was a one-time mistake. Hugged me, called me his rock, promised to pay it back. That was 3 years ago. And I hadn't seen a dime. I'd believed him. Wanted to believe him. Even when Thelma, my best friend, warned me. Jeremy's not the boy you raised, she'd said, her voice gentle but firm. You're giving too much, Eleanor. I'd brushed her off. Told her a mother's love doesn't keep score. But now, sitting under this cold moonlight, I wondered if she'd been right all along. My hand tightened around the broken mint sprig, its juice sticky on my fingers. Had I raised a son who saw me as nothing but a safety net? Had I let him take and take, until there was nothing left of me? The thought twisted in my gut, sharp and raw. I loved Jeremy. Loved him with every bone in my body. But that love was starting to feel like a cage. I wanted to scream. to call him and demand answers. But what would I say? That his laugh had broken my heart? That Leia's words had stripped me bare? I wasn't ready. Not yet. But the spark from last night, that quiet question about who I'd been loving all these years, was growing. I stood, my knee buckling slightly, and walked back to the house. The kitchen was dark. The teacup shards still scattered on the floor. I stepped over them, too tired to clean, and picked up my phone. A notification blinked. An old text thread from Jeremy I hadn't noticed before, one he'd accidentally forwarded me. Buried in a chain about Sophie's school. Don't let Mom know about the 10 grand I owe the casino. Leia's reply was short. I'll handle it. My breath stopped. $10,000. Another secret. Another debt. Hidden from me. And Leia, always Leia, pulling strings I hadn't seen. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. The coffee tin on the counter gleamed faintly. Walter's tin. The one he'd used to brew our mornings. He'd always said I had a fire inside. One that could burn through anything. I touched the tin, its metal cool under my fingers, and felt that fire stir. Jeremy's betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about trust. About the years I'd given. About the woman I'd let myself become. Maybe it was time to stop giving. The morning sun filtered through the library windows at the Boise Community Book Club, casting soft shadows on shelves lined with worn novels and poetry collections. I sat at a long oak table, a cup of lukewarm coffee in my hands, the smell of old pages and fresh ink wrapping around me like a familiar blanket. This place had been my refuge for years, where I'd organized read-alouds for kids and book drives for retirees. Today, though, the warmth of the room couldn't touch the chill in my bones. Jeremy's betrayal, Leia's cruel words, and the $10,000 casino debt I'd uncovered last night clung to me, heavy as the frost on my herb garden. My fingers tightened around the cup, the ceramic warm but not enough to thaw the ache in my chest. Thelma, my best friend since Walter's funeral, sat across from me, her grey curls catching the light as she flipped through a dog-eared copy of Jane Eyre. She glanced up, her sharp brown eyes narrowing. You look like you haven't slept in a week, Eleanor, she said, her voice low but firm. Spill it. I forced a smile, shaking my head. But Thelma wasn't fooled. She'd known me too long, seen me through too many late-night calls about Jeremy's broken promises. I wanted to tell her everything, about the $9,500 he'd taken for a poker game in Vegas, about Leia's voice on the phone calling me old and useless, but the words stuck in my throat, tangled with shame. Had I let this happen? Had I been too soft? Too trusting? Before I could speak, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Jeremy, short and casual, like he hadn't just shattered my world. Hey Mom, can you watch Sophie this week while I'm in Vegas? Thanks. My stomach twisted. No apology. No mention of the surgery money. Just another demand, as if I were a babysitter on call. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, the urge to reply warring with the spark of anger that had been growing since last night. Thelma leaned over, reading the text, and snorted. He's got some nerve, she said. You're not his maid, Eleanor. I nodded, but the weight of his words pressed harder. He expected me to say yes. To keep giving, like I always had. The library door creaked open, and I froze. Leia stood there, her dark hair pulled back, a wicker basket of homemade cookies in her hands. She wore a soft smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, and walked toward me with a grace that felt rehearsed. Eleanor, she said, her voice syrupy sweet, I'm so sorry about the other night. I didn't mean to sound harsh, I was just worried about you. Thelma raised an eyebrow, but I forced myself to nod, my hands clenching under the table. Leia set the basket down, the smell of oatmeal and cinnamon wafting up, and sat beside me. Her perfume, sharp and floral, stung my nose. I wanted to believe her, to think this was genuine, but the memory of her voice on the phone, she's old. She doesn't need that surgery, made my skin crawl. I mumbled something about needing water and slipped into the library's small kitchen, my bad knee aching with each step. The door swung shut behind me, but I lingered, my hand on the counter, steadying myself. Through the thin wall, I heard Leia's voice again, low and urgent, speaking into her phone. Jeremy's going all in on this tournament, she said. If he wins, we're set. If he loses, his mom will cover it. She always does. My breath caught, my heart pounding so loud I thought she'd hear. Leia's voice dropped lower. Once we get her to sign over the house, We can sell it. That old place is worth a fortune. I pressed a hand to my chest, my fingers trembling. The house. My house. The one Walter and I had paid off with decades of sweat. The one with the herb garden and the coffee tin on the counter. Leah wasn't just after my surgery money. She wanted everything. I leaned against the counter, the cold metal grounding me as her words sank in. She'd been playing a long game, pushing Jeremy into gambling, knowing I'd bail him out, all to trap me into giving up my home. And Jeremy, my boy, was letting her. Or worse, he was part of it. I slipped back to the table, my face a mask of calm, though my pulse raced. Leah was still there, chatting about Sophie's school, her smile as smooth as ever. I nodded, my hands folded tightly, and offered her a cookie. She took one, oblivious to the storm inside me. Thelma watched us, her eyes flicking between me and Leah, sensing something was off. As Leah left, promising to call about Sophie, Thelma grabbed my arm. "You need to talk to Roland," she said. "He's a lawyer. A good one. You can't let them do this to you." I walked home in a daze, the Boise streets quiet under a pale spring sky. My knee burned, but it was nothing compared to the fire in my chest. Leah's words looped in my mind, each one a blade. If he loses, his mom will cover it. She always does. I unlocked my front door, the familiar creak of the wood grounding me, and went straight to my bedroom. In the closet, I found a jacket Jeremy had left behind last winter, one I'd meant to return. My hands shook as I checked the pockets, half hoping I was wrong. But there it was, a crumpled receipt from a Vegas casino. $10,000 owed. With Leah's handwriting scrawled on the back. "Keep this for me." I sank onto the bed, the receipt in my lap, my breath shallow. The house. The garden. The life I'd built. All of it was a target. Leah wasn't just manipulating Jeremy. She was dismantling me, piece by piece, and I'd been too blind to see it. But now, I saw. The spark from the garden last night, that quiet question about who I'd been loving, flared into something sharper. Not just anger, but resolve. I wasn't the fool they thought I was. Not anymore. I stood, my knee wobbling, and walked to the kitchen. Walter's coffee tin sat on the counter, steady as ever. I touched it, feeling the fire inside me grow. Leah thought she had me cornered. But she didn't know Eleanor Hayes. Not yet. The clock in Roland's law office struck midnight, its chime echoing through the small room in downtown Boise. I sat across from him, the desk between us cluttered with papers and a flickering lamp that cast long shadows on the walls. Outside, the city slept, its streets blanketed in a quiet that felt almost holy. But inside my chest, a storm raged. The crumpled casino receipt, Leah's scrawled note, and her whispered plan to take my house burned in my mind. $9,500 of my surgery money was gone, gambled away in Vegas. And now, my home, the one Walter and I had built with decades of love, was at risk. My hands rested on my lap, steady despite the fire coursing through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Roland, a wiry man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice, slid a folder toward me. "The contract you found is a fake, Eleanor," he said, tapping the page. "Jeremy tried to use your house as collateral for a loan. But without your signature, it's worthless." I nodded, my jaw tight. The receipt I'd found in Jeremy's jacket, proof of his $10,000 casino debt, lay in my purse, a silent witness to his betrayal. Leah's words from the library, "If he loses, his mom will cover it," fueled my resolve. She thought I'd crumble, that I'd keep bailing them out. She was wrong. "I need to protect what's mine," I said, my voice low but firm. Roland leaned back, jotting notes. "We can lock down your accounts," he said. "Remove Jeremy's access. Cancel any joint credit lines. I can draft a new will, too, if you want to redirect your assets." I thought of my herb garden. The wooden house with its creaky floors. Walter's coffee tin on the counter. That house wasn't just a place. It was my life. My proof that I'd survived. I looked at Roland and nodded. "Do it all," I said. "Every step." By 1 o'clock in the morning, it was done. My bank accounts were frozen to Jeremy's touch. The credit cards he'd used as a safety net, cancelled. I'd signed a new will, leaving my house and savings to a local charity for women over 60, women like me, who'd given too much and gotten too little in return. Roland handed me the papers, his face soft with respect. "You're doing the right thing," he said. I clutched the folder, my bad knee aching as I stood. But the pain felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. For the first time, I wasn't carrying Jeremy's weight. Back home, the kitchen was dark, the teacup shards still scattered from that first night. I sat at the table, my phone in hand, and dialed Jeremy. It was late, but I knew he'd answer. He was in Vegas, probably riding high on dreams of a big win. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with casino noise. "What's up?" I took a breath, keeping my tone warm, the way I used to when he was a boy. "I'm sending you $5,000 more," I said, my heart steady. "For the tournament. Use it wisely." He laughed, relieved. "You're the best, Mom," he said. "I knew you'd come through." I hung up, my fingers cold. The $5,000 was a lie. A trap, to push his spending past the credit limit I'd just lowered. By morning, his cards would be useless. His accounts, locked. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and felt a strange calm. This wasn't revenge. It was justice, quiet and sharp. The kind that didn't need shouting. The next evening, my phone lit up with Jeremy's name. I let it ring, my hands busy pruning basil in the garden. The voicemail he left was frantic, his voice cracking. "Mom, something's wrong with the accounts. I can't access anything. Call me back." I deleted it, my finger steady. An hour later, a car screeched into my driveway. I heard footsteps, then pounding on the door. "Eleanor, open up." Leah shouted, her voice shrill. Jeremy stood behind her, his face pale under the porch light. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his words slurring with panic. I opened the door, my shawl wrapped tight, and faced them. Leah's eyes were red, her makeup streaked, but her chin jutted out, defiant. "You froze the accounts," she said, stepping closer. "You're ruining our family." I looked at Jeremy, waiting for him to speak. But he just stared at the ground, his hands shoved in his pockets. I crossed my arms, my voice cold as the Boise night. "I found the contract, Jeremy," I said. "The one where you tried to mortgage my house." Leah's face twitched, but I kept going. "I know about the $10,000 you owe," I said. "And Leah's plan to sell my home." Jeremy's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "What contract?" he said, glancing at Leah. She grabbed his arm, her voice rising. "She's lying, babe," she said. "She's trying to tear us apart." I stepped forward, my knee steady despite the ache. "I heard you in the library, Leah," I said. "You said I'd cover Jeremy's losses. You said my house would be yours." Her mouth opened, then closed, her tears starting to flow. I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered Walter's coffee tin. My garden. The life they tried to steal. Jeremy's shoulders sagged, his voice small. "I didn't know about the house, Mom," he said. "I swear." Leah turned on him, her tears gone. "You're pathetic," she said, shoving past him toward the car. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, and felt a pang, sharp and fleeting. Then Leah stopped, spinning back to face me, her eyes blazing. "You think you're so smart," she said. "Jeremy's not even your real son. He's Walter's kid, with some woman from before you." I froze, my breath catching, but I held her gaze. "Whether he's mine or not," I said, my voice like steel, "he's no longer my burden." She stormed off, Jeremy trailing behind, and the car peeled away. I closed the door, my hand shaking, and sank into the kitchen chair. Leah's words cut deep, but they didn't break me. I'd loved Jeremy as my own. Given him everything. If he wasn't mine by blood, it didn't change the betrayal. I touched the folder from Roland, its weight grounding me. The house was safe. My future was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt free. 3 months had passed since that night on my porch, when Leah's venomous words about Jeremy's birth cut through the Boise air. The sting lingered, but it didn't own me. I stood in my herb garden, the August sun warming my face, the scent of basil and rosemary curling around me like a quiet embrace. My knees still ached, the surgery delayed by Jeremy's theft of my $9,500, but I moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The garden was thriving, its leaves lush and green, a testament to what I could nurture when I stopped pouring myself into others. Inside, Walter's coffee tin sat on the kitchen counter, a steady anchor, reminding me I was stronger than the pain. I'd returned to the Boise Community Book Club, where the smell of old books and fresh coffee welcomed me like an old friend. I'd started teaching kids to read, guiding their small hands over pages of adventure stories, their laughter filling the cracks in my heart. The library was alive with chatter, the clink of mugs, the rustle of pages, and for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged. Thelma was there, her grey curls bouncing as she organized a book drive. Her sharp eyes softened when they met mine. She hadn't said "I told you so" about Jeremy, but her quiet presence was enough. She'd been right all along. And I was learning to listen. My days found a rhythm, slow and deliberate. Mornings in the garden. Afternoons at the library. Evenings with a notebook, where I scribbled thoughts about the life I'd lived. I called it my journal, but it was more than that. A map of my scars. From Walter's death to Jeremy's betrayal. Writing felt like tending the garden, pulling weeds to make room for something new. I wrote about the teacup I'd broken. The casino receipt with Leia's handwriting. The fake contract Jeremy had signed to mortgage my house. I wrote about Leia's revelation, that Jeremy wasn't my son by blood, and how it had shaken me, but hadn't changed the love I'd given him. The words were raw, messy, but they were mine. One afternoon, a letter arrived, tucked in my mailbox among bills and flyers. Jeremy's handwriting, uneven and rushed, stared up at me. I stood in the kitchen, the letter unopened, my fingers tracing its edges. Part of me wanted to burn it, to let the ashes scatter in the garden. But another part, the part that still saw him as the boy I'd raised, needed to know. I sat at the table, Walter's coffee tin glinting in the sunlight, and slit the envelope. "Mom, I'm sorry." Leia pushed me into the gambling, but I let her. "I messed up. I want to make it right." I set the letter down, my chest tight. His words sounded sincere, but I'd heard promises before. $5,000 for a casino debt. $15,000 for a startup that bought a car. I wrote back, my pen steady. "Words aren't enough, Jeremy," I said. "Show me with actions." I mailed it, feeling lighter, not because I trusted him, but because I'd drawn a line. Leia was gone, or so Jeremy's letter said. She'd left him, taking her sharp tongue and her plans to sell my house. Leaving Sophie behind. I thought of my granddaughter, her gap-toothed smile, the way she'd slurp my tomato soup. One Sunday, Jeremy texted, asking if Sophie could visit. I agreed, but only for her. We met at a park near my house, the grass soft underfoot, the air warm with summer's end. Sophie ran to me, her arms wide, and I knelt, ignoring the stab in my knee, to hug her. Her hair smelled of strawberry shampoo. And for a moment, I was just a grandma, not a woman carrying a lifetime of hurt. I showed her how to plant mint, her small hands digging in the dirt, her giggles bright as the sun. Jeremy watched from a bench, his face drawn. But I kept my focus on Sophie. "I'm not here for you," I told him when she ran to the swings. "She's my granddaughter, but you're not my responsibility anymore." The book club became my lifeline. Thelma organized a read-aloud event for charity, raising money for a women's shelter, and asked me to share a story. I hesitated. My journal was too raw, too personal. But she insisted. "You've got something to say, Eleanor," she said, her hand on my arm. "Let them hear it." The night of the event, the library was packed. Faces, young and old, turned toward me. I stood at the podium, my hands trembling, and read a passage about the night I'd locked Jeremy's accounts. The moment I'd chosen myself over his chaos. My voice shook at first, but it grew steady, the words carrying years of sacrifice and survival. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a woman in the back, her hair white as mine, stood and clapped. Others joined. And she crossed the room to grasp my hand. "You made me feel less alone," she said, her eyes wet. I nodded, my throat tight, and realized I wasn't alone either. Later, as I helped Thelma stack chairs, I found a small notebook in my bag, one I'd used to jot garden notes. Tucked inside was a page from Walter's old journal, a relic I'd forgotten. His handwriting, bold and slanted, filled the lines. "Jeremy isn't my son by blood. But you've given him a mother's love. If he ever hurts you, don't let him steal your light." I pressed the page to my chest, my eyes burning. Walter had known the truth. had carried it to spare me. His words felt like a hand reaching through time, steadying me. I walked home under starlit sky, the Boise streets quiet, my knee a dull ache. The garden waited, its herbs swaying in the breeze, and I knelt to touch the mint Sophie had planted. My heart was full, not with anger or grief, but with a fragile hope. I'd lost Jeremy. Maybe forever. But I'd found something else. Myself. A year had passed since I stood on my porch, facing Jeremy and Leah's accusations. Their voices sharp in the cold Boise night. The herb garden behind my house was in full bloom now, its mint and rosemary stretching toward the morning sun, their scent weaving through the air like a quiet promise. I stood among the plants, my hands dusted with soil, my bad knee steadier than it had been in months. The $9,500 Jeremy took for his Vegas poker game was gone. My surgery, still out of reach. But I'd found something more valuable. Myself. This is the end of my story. But it's also a beginning. Stick with me, and let me know in the comments what you'd do if you had to choose between family and your own peace. Inside, my kitchen was warm, the wooden table scarred but familiar. Walter's coffee tin still sat on the counter like a sentinel. I'd published a small memoir, Under the Cold Moonlight, a collection of journal entries about my journey through Jeremy's betrayal and my quiet fight to reclaim my life. The Boise Community Book Club had sold copies at their spring fair, and the money went to a charity for women over 60, women like me who'd given too much. The book wasn't fancy, just my words, raw and true. About the teacup I'd broken. The fake contract Jeremy signed. Leah's cruel revelation that he wasn't my son by blood. Writing it had been like tending my garden, pulling weeds to let the good things grow. One June morning, as I pruned basil, a car pulled into my driveway. My heart skipped, but I kept working, my hands steady. Jeremy stepped out, Sophie beside him, her gap-toothed smile bright as ever. He carried a small envelope, his shoulders hunched, his face older than his 35 years. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the gate, keeping it closed between us. Sophie ran forward, hugging my legs, and I knelt, breathing in her strawberry shampoo. "I brought you something, Grandma," she said, handing me a crayon drawing of a garden, mint leaves scrawled in green. I smiled, tucked it into my pocket, and looked at Jeremy. He held out the envelope, his voice low. "It's $2,000, Mom," he said. "It's not much, but I'm trying. I want to make things right." I took the envelope, its weight light but real, and nodded. I'd read his letter months ago, his apology for letting Leah push him into gambling, for taking my surgery money, for the contract that nearly cost me my house. I'd told him then that words weren't enough. And now, he was here, trying to prove it. But trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. "I'll see Sophie once a month," I said, my voice calm. "We'll make soup. Plant herbs. But you and we're not there yet." Jeremy's eyes dropped, but he nodded. "I get it," he said. "I'll keep trying." He turned to leave, Sophie waving as they drove off. I stood by the gate, the envelope in my hand, and felt a quiet ache. Jeremy wasn't my son by blood, Leah had made that clear. But I'd loved him as mine. Raised him through sleepless nights and empty bank accounts. That love was still there, but it no longer owned me. I'd given him enough. Now, I was giving to myself. The book club's summer read-aloud was that evening, the library glowing with string lights, tables piled with lemonade and cookies. Thelma had outdone herself, her grey curls bouncing as she greeted folks, her laugh filling the room. I wore my best sweater, the one Walter always liked, and stood at the podium, my memoir in hand. The crowd was small but warm, faces I knew from years in Boise, plus a few new ones. I read a passage about locking Jeremy's accounts, the night I chose my future over his chaos. My voice was steady, each word a step I'd taken to freedom. When I finished, the room clapped, and a woman with white hair approached, her hand trembling as she took mine. "Your story is mine too," she said, her eyes wet. "Thank you for speaking it." I walked home under starlit Boise sky, the air cool, the streets hushed. A letter waited in my mailbox, not from Jeremy this time, but from the charity. "Your new will ensures your home will support women like you," it read. "We're grateful." I smiled, folding it carefully. My house, with its creaky floors and herb garden, would live on, helping others find their strength. It felt right, like closing a circle. Back in the kitchen, I set the letter by Walter's coffee tin, its dented metal catching the light. I'd found one last note from him, tucked inside the lid months ago when I'd cleaned it. Eleanor, he'd written. If Jeremy hurts you, live for yourself. I love you. His words had carried me through, a whisper from the past that gave me courage. I ran my fingers over the tin, my heart full but light, like a cloud drifting on the breeze. Jeremy's $2,000 was a start, not an end. And Sophie's drawing was a future I'd cherish. But this moment, this life, was mine. I stepped outside, the garden bathed in moonlight, its leaves whispering in the wind. I looked up at the Boise sky and smiled. I'd stopped waiting for anyone to save me, I'd saved myself. Let me know in the comments what this ending means to you. Have you ever had to let go to find your peace? Please subscribe to this channel so that you never miss an upload. Stay safe and we'll see you in the next video.